Schwartz's courtroom for expert interviews on current events and past issues. Schwartz's Law, where you can be the jury.
Hello, I'm Michael Schwartz. Welcome to Schwartz's Law. On the docket today, mortgage foreclosures. We all know that Michigan suffered terribly as a result of the economic hardships that have come over the entire country. And Michigan has been harder hit than most states. And what that means is a lot of people have lost their jobs and they may be in trouble with their mortgages. Or it may be that they got mortgages at low rates because that was pushed on them by lenders, only to find out that they had variable mortgages and those rates increased to maybe as much as double what it started out as, and they can no longer afford to pay them. We will be talking to Ken Gross, who is a lawyer who specializes in representing people who have problems with their mortgages and whose houses may be going into foreclosure. So listen carefully, because what he says may well be of importance to you as well. I'll dig out the facts. You be the judge and jury on Schwartz's Law. We've had a lot of problems in Michigan recently. We've had home foreclosures by such a large number that it's unbelievable. People are losing their homes. People are being thrown out of what they have to live in, and it's become unbelievable. And we have lawyers who are out there trying to help these people keep themselves in their homes, which is, for most people, the biggest investment that they've got, and also the place where they have security and where they can come back and have the warmth and comfort that we all want to have in our daily lives, a refuge from the outside world. One of those lawyers is with us today, Ken Gross of the Thav Gross law firm from Bingham Farms, and welcome to Schwartz's Law.
Thank you, Michael. It's nice to be here.
We have seen an awful lot of problems. There are so many people who are being thrown out of their homes. What is the situation generally in terms of people who have been given notices by banks or mortgage companies or whatever that they're about to be foreclosed?
The situation is critical, and it's been that way really since November of 2008 till now, and it's not getting better, it's actually getting worse. I mean, it's not just Detroit, it's metropolitan Detroit, it's all of Michigan. In a lot of respects, it's nationwide. There's 5 terrible housing markets in the country. We're one of the top 5 as being one of the worst. Foreclosures are projected to go up for 2011. Prices on homes are still going down. There was a report last week, metropolitan Detroit homes went down another 1 or 2% over the last quarter. And the situation is one that people are so far underwater in their homes. You've got 2 problems. You've got the person who wants to stay in his home but is either unable to get a modification or is struggling to obtain one. And you also have another group of people that really need an exit strategy from that house because it's so far underwater they can't possibly fiscally afford to keep it on a long-term basis.
Well, a lot of people, are in a situation where they may be paying their monthly mortgages or whatever, and occasionally they find that they can't pay it, or they have problems because maybe they just got laid off from a job, or maybe there's some other reason why they're just not able to come up with the money. Could you just briefly explain to our viewers what the process is so that they'll understand if they don't pay their mortgages or whatever reason they get behind, and how that goes along and where that leads to?
The process takes some time, but the first process is once you fall behind 60 days on your mortgage payment, unless you receive some kind of grace period or agreement from the lender, which typically you will not be able to do, after 60 days, the first letter you'll get is a letter threatening to default you on the loan and accelerate the balance, which means suppose you have a $200,000 mortgage. If they accelerate, then the immediate $200,000 becomes due and payable at that time. If you don't pay the mortgage after that 60 days, they'll give you 14 days where they're threatening to accelerate, then they accelerate. The next thing that will happen is you'll receive a letter, typically, it could be as short of a period of time as a week, and it could be as long of a period of time of 3-4 months. The lenders are all over the world in terms of how fast they move their files. But the next letter comes from an attorney. And that letter will typically, a lot of times it's a letter from an attorney, and it's got a lot of fine print in it, and it comes by regular mail and certified mail. In that letter, there's a sentence in there that says, if you respond within 14 days from the date of the letter, you have a right to have a mediation with a housing counselor in an effort to modify your mortgage. Now, what's critical is you must respond within the 14 days from the date of the letter, not the date you receive it by certified mail.
And when you respond, is it sufficient to respond by telephone, or do you have to do it in writing?
You have to do it in writing. In fact, when we do it for clients, we do it in writing. We do it by certified mail with return receipt. We send it both to the attorney, and the statute actually says you have to send it to a housing counselor. And in that letter that you receive, there's going to be a list of housing counselors. And even though the housing counselors really don't have any involvement in the process any longer, you still technically need to send the letter to them as well. If you do send the letter within that 14-day period, approximately a week after that, you'll receive a letter from the law firm that says, we've received your letter, you're entitled to your mediation, and these are the documents that we want you to send us. And that letter will typically require you to send a couple months' bank statements, your last filed tax return, a monthly budget, and your W-2 earnings or your profit and loss if you're self-employed. At that point, about another month transpires, and there's actually either a telephone conference or a meeting, and you do have an opportunity to modify the mortgage. Now, this is called the 3205 process, and it's unique to Michigan, and it's a statute that was passed by the legislature in July of 2009.
Right.
The problem with it is that law is expiring July 5th, 2011, unless it's extended.
So it's coming right up on us in the next 6 months.
It's coming up very closely. And the benefit of the law is it at least gives you the opportunity to have that meeting and try and modify the mortgage. And in that circumstance, the lender is responding to Michigan law, so it takes you out of this national pool where, you know, like a company like Bank of America and Chase, they have literally hundreds of thousands of mortgage modification applications pending, and they only have 200-300 people or 2,000-3,000 people that are processing them. They don't know what to do with them. They can't keep pace. At least in Michigan, if you avail yourself of this 3205 procedure, you have that first chance at a modification meeting. And
so hopefully the lender is then going to do something other than just go along the usual track.
Well, the lender is actually required to at least modify the payment down so that if you have income that qualifies, so that your payment will be no greater than 38% of your gross monthly income. So and if they refuse to offer you the modification, they're actually required to notify you in writing as to why. And if they're wrong, you technically have a remedy where you could file an action to stop the foreclosure process, which is what the next step would be. That aspect of the statute has all sorts of problems because it's very difficult for someone to hire a lawyer when they don't have any money to make their house payment to try and file a lawsuit against a lender to stop a foreclosure. But the benefit of the statute is you do get this modification meeting and you get it faster, and in our experience we have a high rate of success on modifications in this circumstance, whereas when we try and modify a mortgage for a client in the normal process in the national pool, it's extremely frustrating.
All right, well, before we go on with the rest of this, we need to actually take a little brief break because we have words from our sponsors.